Coming up on this brand new episode of the Cinematic Sound Radio Podcast. It's another episode programmed by you. This is our second annual All Request Christmas Special, and it begins now.
Bringing you the very best music for film, TV, and video games, this is the Cinematic Sound Radio Network.
And welcome back to the Cinematic Sound Radio Podcast. My name is Eric Woods, the founder and executive producer of this podcast. I'm also a proud member of the International Film Music Critics Association. This podcast is a celebration of everything film, TV, and video game music. There is something in this podcast for everyone, whether you're a film music veteran or a movie music newcomer. Just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to give us a listen. I hope you enjoy the show. And we'd also appreciate a rating and a review of this show as well. Today's program is another All Request show. All of the All Request shows you hear on this podcast actually come, all of the requests you hear on all of our All Request shows come from Cinematic Sound Radio patrons. So if you want to participate in the next All Request show, then head over to patreon.com/Cinematic Sound Radio. You can sign up for the orchestrator tier. It's only $5 a month, where you will then have the privilege of participating in this very show. Again, check it out at patreon.com/Cinematic Sound Radio. So our All Request Christmas Special, this is our second All Request Christmas Special, begins with a request from a long-time Cinematic Sound Radio supporter, Angela Rabbiton. Here's what Angela had to say. Dear Eric, I'm so sorry the Halloween request show didn't work out, but at least we can enjoy it next year. And I'm just going to stop right there and just preface that with a note that I was supposed to do an All Request Halloween episode, but we had some technical difficulties and we weren't able to get the show out. So we are saving all those requests for next year. Okay, back to Angela's note. In the meantime, what a wonderful gift to participate in another All Request Christmas show. Last year, I dedicated my choice to my niece, Brianna, who loves both Christmas and John Williams. On Christmas Day, I took Bri aside and had her pull up the episode on her phone and let her hear the Christmas Eve montage from The Nightmare Before Christmas by Danny Elfman, which was another great choice from another member that I knew she'd love, and she did. Then she heard my dedication. Her reaction to the letter and the cue is something I will cherish for the rest of my life. So thank you, Eric, for facilitating that. She also said she listened to the whole show later that day, and I'm sure she loved it. Naturally, I can think of no better follow-up than to dedicate this choice to her as well. I mentioned in my previous letter that due to circumstances, we have not been able to spend as much time together as either of us would have liked over the last 8, soon to be 9 years. I regret that is still the case, only because now we have moved. We're choosing to unpack and organize our things at a slow, more relaxed pace, so as to not overwhelm ourselves mentally or physically. Sadly, that's why we have been unable to have Bri, or anyone else for that matter, over for a visit. But I'm sure things will be ready for her at some point next year. For now, though, as Kevin says in Home Alone 2, another Christmas in the trenches. So, dear Bri, when Eric announced this show, I found it strangely easy to come up with my dedication to you. When you were younger, I remember you loving the Polar Express. I honestly don't know if you have ever heard the beautiful Alan Silvestri score outside the film, and because I hope to introduce you to other great composers beside John Williams, I can think of no better selection than something from this modern classic. I remember seeing it in the theater when it first came out, a few years before your parents even got married. I confess I had mixed feelings about the film at the time, but I've grown to truly cherish the story. One thing I will always love, though, was Silvestri's beautiful score, though I recall thinking at the time that there wasn't enough of it on the album. That's probably because I love what he did so much, I wanted as much of it as I could get my hands on. I confess I find myself in a similar situation with regards to selecting a cue for you. I want to feature the March of the Elves, I believe, in the first gift of Christmas because they all fit together so beautifully. About a half hour before writing this, I listened to those cues to figure out which ones to choose. I regret having to leave any of them out, but in all honesty, if I had to choose only one, it would have to be I Believe. The emotion expressed in this gorgeous cue is the best thing about the entire score. So once again, dear Brianna, allow me to give you one last Christmas gift this year through my amazing friend Eric and the Cinematic Sound radio community. I'm sure you'll enjoy it and look forward to seeing your reaction once again as you play it. All my love, Aunt Angie. Thanks again, Eric. I wish you and the rest of the CSR hosts and all fellow patrons and listeners a happy and safe holiday season. What an incredible way to start this show. A lovely, lovely, touching and emotional note, Angela. I love reading your requests, and I love that you are hopefully making this an annual tradition here on Cinematic Sound Radio. No doubt we are going to do another all-request show next year, so I can't wait to read your request, hopefully to Brianna again next year. But for now, here is your second dedication to Brianna. This is music from The Polar Express by Alan Silvestri and the cue, I Believe. The cue, I believe, from the Polar Express by Alan Silvestri, and that request is from Angela Rabbiton. Up next, a request from Glenn McDorman. Here's what Glenn had to say. Hi, Eric. I look forward to your Christmas episode every year, so thank you so much for doing this. This year, I'd like you to play Somewhere in My Memory from Home Alone by John Williams, but not the version from the film. Rather, an arrangement for brass quintet by Greg Danner and performed by the Brass Arts Quintet on their album Christmas Brass Volume 2, Santa Claus is Back in Town. I've chosen this for my nearly 4-year-old son, Finch, who remains your biggest fan. Finch loves John Williams. Some of his earliest favorite pieces of music were the Prelude and March from Superman and the Jaws theme, which we played endlessly when he was 1 and 2. In fact, he recently got a stuffed shark and has been running around the house doing the Jaws theme with it. But Finch always adores brass instruments. You may recall that my first participation in an all-request show was a request for you to give us some great trumpet music. A few weeks ago, we went to a tuba concert, and just this morning, Finch announced that he wants to learn how to play the French horn. So this brass quintet arrangement of John Williams is tailor-made for him, and we've been listening to it a lot. Thank you again for doing this, and a very Merry Christmas to you, Eric, and all your listeners. Glenn, thank you again for that fantastic note, and it's always great to hear an update on your son, Finch, and I just love that he's falling in love with music and is eventually and finally going to be playing an instrument. Man, the French horn's a hard one, but I hope he picks it up, and I hope he's successful at it, and I'm more than happy to play your request from arguably one of the greatest Christmas scores of all time. This is Home Alone by John Williams. This is Somewhere in My Memory, but this is the brass quintet arrangement by Greg Danner, performed by the Brass Arts Quintet. Somewhere in My Memory from Home Alone by John Williams, and that was the brass quintet arrangement by Greg Danner, performed by the Brass Arts Quintet, and that request comes from Glenn McDormand, and that goes out to his son, Finch.
On the air and streaming on the web since 1996, this is the Cinematic Sound Radio Network.
This is Cinematic Sound Radio, and you're listening to our All Request Christmas Special. This is our second annual All Request Christmas Special, and I just absolutely love reading the notes from our patrons who get to participate in this show. And again, if you want to participate in the Cinematic Sound Radio All Request shows, then please head over to patreon.com/Cinematic Sound Radio. Join the orchestrator tier, and it'll cost you $5 a month, and you get a whole bunch of other great perks as well in that tier. And then you get to participate in the All Request shows. Our next request comes from Eldelay Morningstar. Good Sunday, Eric. Hope you're doing well. I've been a bit worried about you. Take care of yourself. That's the most important thing in life. Just going to break from this because to preface again this little note here. It's been an extremely busy year for myself. I've been on the road more days than I ever thought I would be. Again, doing some very exciting things, but spending a lot of time away from family, and just there's so much work to be done. Yeah, it's a bit of a stressful time, but again, I wouldn't give this up for the world. So I'm doing okay, and I'm coming up to a 2-week holiday, which is going to be so great, and I've been looking forward to it for a very, very long time. So I'll be okay, and hopefully I'll be back and refreshed in 2024 and really ramping up these podcast episodes for you. So anyway, back to Eldelay's note. Here's my long introduction for a short composition. Oh my, here we are again in the Christmas period with Millie Mouth music all over the country. I know, most people adore it. They relish attending family Christmas meals, but perhaps even more so, returning home afterwards. Good deed done. Check. Most people love the overload of always the same songs. Last Christmas, All I Want for Christmas, Let It Snow, and of course, Do They Know It's Christmas? On the radio, in the shops, in your YouTube, Spotify, and title list. Because everybody loves it. Pfft. But for me, it's always a time to go retreat to my prepared alternative Christmas music, the ones you don't hear all the time. Over the years, I found some very nice ones, and one of them is what I wish you all. How do I sell this? It's called Happy Holidays from the game Kingdom Hearts HD 2.5 Remix. Yes, that's the full name of the game, arranged and composed by Yoko Shimomura. It's the battle song in Christmas Town. Did I ruin it now? Have some good and blessed holidays, Eric. I definitely will now. Superb note. Merry Christmas to you. And thank you for your unique request. I'm more than happy to play it here on the program, and I can't wait to say the title of this game again. Kingdom Hearts HD 2.5 Remix. It's called Happy Holidays. It's the battle song from the game. Enjoy. Music from the video game Kingdom Hearts HD 2.5 Remix, the track Happy Holidays, composed and arranged by Yoko Shimomura. And that unique, fantastic request comes from Aldale Morningstar. Up next on our 2023 All Request Christmas Special is a request from Will Welch. Here's what Will had to say. Hi, Eric. I hope you'll permit me this brilliant score as coming from a Christmas film. Of course, I refer to The Lion in Winter, which is a 1968 historical drama set at Christmas in 1183. It centers on political and personal troubles among the royal family of Henry II of England, his wife Eleanor, their 3 surviving sons, and the French king. The film was directed by Anthony Harvey and starred Peter O'Toole, Katharine Hepburn, John Castle, Anthony Hopkins in his first major role, and Timothy Dalton in his film debut. The score was by the late, great English composer John Barry. The film was an absolute success, nominated for 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Screenplay, Best Costume Design, Best Film Score, winning 3 of these, Best Actress, Best Screenplay, and Best Film Score, Barry's 3rd win. Barry was in demand after the success of the score and song from Born Free. For this, he chose to score the film with his first passion, that of choral music. He felt that such music would best suit the film. Barry used his chorus traditionally reciting Latin lyrics written specifically for the film. He also used the chorus as wordless accompaniment to the orchestra. The Lion in Winter is a magnificent score and probably Barry's magnum opus. From this score, I'd love to hear God Damn You, which is a highlight of mine. This has some lovely chorus and utilizes the main theme amongst others in a wonderful cue. If this is not a score you have in your collection, then you need a word with Santa to see if he can rectify that. Merry Christmas, Eric, family, patrons, and all at the Cinematic Sound Radio podcast. Have a great festive time and hopefully a happy new year. Thanks, Will in the UK. Of course I have the score, Will. Come on. I have the original soundtrack. I also have the fabulous re-recording. And this is one of my favorite John Barry scores of all time. So I'm super happy that you chose this score. This is the track God Damn You from John Barry's Academy Award-winning score to The Lion in Winter. A request from Will Welch. That's A Lion in Winter, the track Goddamn You, from John Barry's Academy Award-winning score.
Bringing you the very best music for film, TV, and video games, this is the Cinematic Sound Radio Network.
Our next request comes from Lee Wildman. Here's what Lee has to say. Hey, Eric. Ho, 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 everyone. I hope everyone listening to the show is ready and able to enjoy the holiday season however they see fit with family, friends, and loved ones. Okay, my choice. Pun time. Could not resist. A few hours spent mulling over this selection and quickly came to what I consider to be a cracker, which its snow joke absolutely slays me every time I hear it. I would like to ask for Sleigh Ride Over Manhattan from Santa Claus the Movie by Henry Mancini. You'll all love the choice too, I hope, and it will leave you pining for more Mancini. I'm off back to the asylum now, but wishing everyone a very safe, peaceful, healthy holiday time. Lee. Lee, I know someone who's going to love the puns. Jason Drew, are you out there? Hope you're listening, because this sort of stuff is right up your alley. Anyway, thank you for the request, Lee. Here is Sleigh Ride Over Manhattan from Santa Claus the Movie by Henry Mancini. Music by Henry Mancini from the film Santa Claus the Movie, the track Sleigh Ride Over Manhattan, and that request comes from Lee Wildman. Our next request comes from Dennis Challer, and here's what he has to say. Hi, Eric. I believe the first ever Christmas movie that I watched in the cinema was The Santa Claus from 1994. I was 9 years old, and I can still remember the lump that I had in my throat when Santa got arrested by the police. How could they do that? I asked myself. And Tim Allen just looked so nice and jolly as Santa. I wasn't paying much attention to the music back then, but later discovered Michael Convertino's score and liked it ever since. Unfortunately, I never got a hold of the CD or anything, and I'm not even sure it got a proper release in general. So if you by any chance have this score, I'd love to hear the track. Listen. Thank you and best regards from Vienna, Austria, Dennis. Oh, Dennis, of course I have this score. Yeah, it's a bit of a hard one to find. It was released on Milan Records. I'm not 100% sure about its availability, but it was commercially released, so you should be able to find it. So here is the track Listen from the Santa Claus with music by the incredibly underrated Michael Convertino. The track Listen from the Santa Claus, released in 1994, with music by Michael Convertino, and that request comes from Dennis Challer. Our next request comes from Stacy Levitsanis, and here's what she has to say. Dear Eric, despite craving sentimentality in film music most of the time, the relentless and inescapable commercial onslaught of the Christmas industry compels me to embrace more cynical soundtracks that gently mock the season instead of celebrating it. One of my favorite scores for a movie set during Christmas that aggressively shuns Christmas cheer is Batman Returns. What's striking about the score is that with a few melodic tweaks and key changes, several passages could easily sound like cheery Christmas music. But in keeping with Burton's strong creative control over this sequel, Elfman's score maintains the somber yet sardonic mood that permeates the entire film. Amidst the richly textured brooding melancholy cues and a notably limited use of his famous main theme, Selina Kyle's music stands out, especially the track I've chosen for this request show, Selina Transforms Part 2. With its slinky glissandi strings, this track powerfully expresses Selina's fractured emotional state. The central melody still makes me shiver with that ineffable emotion always present when listening to a beloved piece of music. Thanks, Stacy. Stacy, I love the way you write. I wish I could do it myself. The way you describe music, unbelievable. Just everything you say is perfect. I love this cue. I love this score. Great choice. This is Danny Elfman's Batman Returns and the track Selina Transforms Part 2. A request from Stacy Levitsanis. That's Batman Returns by Danny Elfman and the track Selena Transforms Part 2.
This is the Cinematic Sound Radio Network, and you're listening to the Flagship Show with Eric Woods.
Our next request comes from Jochen Stoltz. Here's what he had to say. Hi, Eric. My request for this Christmas special is the track Hymne des Fraternités. I'm Dreaming of Home from Merry Christmas by Philippe Rombi. This track always makes me cry because it's so touching and emotional. The beautiful women's choir and solo soprano combined with heavenly strings of the London Symphony Orchestra is just breathtaking. I also adore the version with solo violin. So enjoy and relax. Goosebumps warranty. Thanks for playing. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to everyone listening. Jochen from Germany. Thanks again for the great request, and what a great track. So here is music by Philippe Rombi. The track Hymne des Fraternités. I am Dreaming of Home from the film Merry Christmas, also known as Joyeux Noël. Hymne de Fraternité, I Am Dreaming of Home, from the film Merry Christmas, also known as Joyeux Noël, with music by Philippe Rombi, and that request comes from Jochen Stoltz. Up next, a request from Jerome Flick. Here's what Jerome had to say. Hi, Eric. Thanks again for organizing yet another all-request show. So sorry that the Halloween episode couldn't get through in time, but excited to hear everybody's pick for Christmas. I didn't want to choose something I'm too familiar with this time, and decided to go with a lesser-known composer who's getting very nice reviews year after year for her work. So I'm going to go with the track Travel Far and Wide from The Claus Family by Anne-Kathrin Dern. This is a German Christmas movie that I know close to nothing about, to be honest. I've only heard a couple of Anne-Kathrin Dern scores, Fearless and The Sprite Sisters, both very well done, but for some reasons when I thought about the recent European scores for Christmas movies, her name just came up instantly to my mind. So this has been an opportunity for me to visit some more of her work, so I hope that my pick will lead some other listeners to discover her music. Thanks again, and I wish you all a wonderful time for your year-end celebration. Cheers, Jerome Flick. Thank you very much, Jerome. I like Anne-Kathrin Dern as well. We have played a couple of her scores on the show. I think we've played The Claus Family on the program before. Maybe Lee did it. Well, in any case, more than happy to play more of it for you here on the program. This is Travel Far and Wide from The Claus Family by Anne-Kathrin Dern. Music from The Claus Family by Anne-Kathrin Dern, the track Travel Far and Wide, And that request comes from Jerome Flick. Up next, two very short requests. So let's get them in as fast as we can. First, from Victor Field. Here's what he has to say, or actually he asks. And this might be the shortest request that we've ever got, I think. And I'm not talking about words. I'm just talking about the actual music. Check this out. So this comes from Victor Field again. Can I suggest the Christmas arrangement of John Williams' Amblin Entertainment logo music that was on one of Entrada's Amazing Stories albums? Could suggest using it at the end of the show, not stepping on your toes. Yeah, I'm going to save something else for the end of the show, but here you go. It's a quickie, folks. That's it. That's all Victor wanted to hear this Christmas. From Amazing Stories, that was John Williams' Christmas arrangement of the Amblin Entertainment logo music. I think Victor right now has the record for the shortest request of all time. Anybody want to step up and beat it next time? Victor, thank you very much. And Merry Christmas to you. And here is another short request, in short just in this time the way of the amount of words that were sent to me. This comes from my friend, Daniel Heron. He's also known as Soundtracks with Birdman. I've been on his YouTube channel many times. He's one of the biggest soundtrack fans that I know, and he is the reason why I finally got to see John Williams conduct for the very first time this past March in Chicago. So I owe him a lot, and I do appreciate that he's also one of our patrons. And so he had a message. He has a request that's 11 words long, and here it is. I would like The Runway from Die Hard 2, Die Harder. That's it. Simple. To the point. I get it. Awesome. Sometimes that's all you need to say. And yes, Die Hard 2 is a Christmas movie. Deal with it. Here's Michael Kamen's The Runway from Die Hard 2, Die Harder. That request comes from Daniel Hearn. It's The Runway from Die Hard 2, Die Harder by Michael Kamen.
This is the Cinematic Sound Radio Network.
Our next request comes from Carl Wonders. Here's what Carl had to say. Dear Eric, thank you for doing another Christmas-themed All Request special. I'm really looking forward to hearing all the wonderful selections the other patrons will come up with for the show. For me, this took some thinking, no small part because the absolutely wonderful playlist that you shared took no fewer than 3 ideas I had. I'm going to preface this with just a little note here. On Patreon, a few days ago, I created a CD-length playlist of film music Christmas tunes, and this idea came from a friend of mine who asked me for suggestions to come up with a playlist that is a CD-length playlist, about 80 minutes, that he could then share with his friends. So I came with this playlist and I thought, oh, this is actually pretty good. And so I'll just share it with my patrons. And so Carl heard it, and I apparently had 3 tracks on there that I guess he wanted to play on this show. Anyway, let's move on to what else Carl has to say here. So once again this year, I'm picking something that lands me firmly with our friends and fellow listeners over in the UK, despite me having lived my entire life in North America and never having visited the UK in my life. Ever since I was introduced to them by my mother as a child, I have been in love with the stories of Raymond Briggs. His perpetually cranky Father Christmas brings me immense joy every year, and the same goes for his other illustrated book, The Snowman. Wordlessly telling the tale of a young boy who builds a snowman who comes to life and spends a night having various adventures, the book's story is entirely carried by Briggs's wonderful colored pencil artwork. The television adaptation adds in a Christmas element to the story, and because it too has no dialogue, is entirely carried by the visuals and the music of composer Howard Blake. Blake's score effortlessly conveys the sense of magic, adventure, silliness, and ultimately a bittersweet sense of loss through the special. Unlike most scores, it plays continuously through the entire story, acting almost like a tone poem, with animated scenes as accompaniment. This, however, left me in a bit of a quandary. The album presentation has the entire score as 2 long tracks broken only by the song Walking in the Air, sung by Peter Addy. While the score really is best enjoyed as one unbroken composition, I knew I'd be excommunicated from the CSR family if I chose a 30-minute cue. So I'm offering up the final few minutes of the score, where after receiving a gift from Father Christmas, the boy and the snowman fly away home. The next morning, he awakens only to find the morning sun has melted the snowman away, but he still has the scarf he was given by Father Christmas the night before. I stumbled across this special a few years ago on YouTube and watched it with my daughter, and it's become an annual viewing ever since. I'll close by simply wishing all of the listeners a wonderful holiday season, whichever holiday you choose to celebrate. Best wishes from Washington, D.C., Carl. A lovely, lovely note and a wonderful selection, a unique selection here on the show. So this is an excerpt from the Snowman soundtrack written by Howard Blake. A request from Carl Wonders. An excerpt from the soundtrack to The Snowman, with music by Howard Blake. Our last listener request comes from Joe Wiles. Here's what Joe has to say. Eric, no, I didn't forget. Work has been busy lately, and well, that's a good thing, right? Hello, everyone. Here's hoping all of you from the Cinematic Sound Radio family are happy, healthy, and well. This selection is one of those that means 100 different things to 100 different people. However, here's hoping a few of you can relate. Memories of Christmases as I grew up weren't always bountiful in gifts, but were always full of memories that shaped me into a lot of the person I am today. Mom tried to always make the holidays special. When money was tight, my mom tried to make gift opening into more than just minutes of unwrapping and more of a drawn-out event. Some years we had scavenger hunts. One year we did the 12 Days of Christmas, when I got a present each day for the 12 days of Christmas vacation. That one kind of got old for both of us. Plus the one gift on Christmas morning was, well, sort of off, but it was a good one. One year Mom started a tradition of hiding the last present. It wasn't always the biggest one, but one that we both knew had a certain weight. It's a tradition that has lasted with my mom and my own family. If I remember correctly, I think Mom and I both agreed that she got the idea of hiding the last present from a movie. As with my selection from your last All Request show, Halloween, something Mom chose or had to do out of necessity became one of my most special memories. Eric, I'd like to request a track titled A Chip Off the Old Block from the motion picture A Christmas Story. If memory serves me accurately, this track features a certain part of the movie when Ralphie finally gets his most sought-after Christmas request later that evening, hiding behind some furniture, put there by his dad. To all my Cinematic Sound Radio family, I wish you all the happiest of holiday wishes, dreams, and joy, and to also remember to set your memories to music. That's what makes them nostalgic. Oh, and one last note of interest. That one gift I received on Christmas morning when Mom and I did the whole 12 Days of Christmas thingy was my very first CD player. And in the drawer was a certain CD titled John Williams' Out of This World. Thank you very much, Joe. Great story. And I'm very pleased to present music, I think for the very first time on this show, from A Christmas Story, the track A Chip Off the Old Block, with music by Paul Zaza and Carl Zittrer. That's a request from Joe Wiles. Music from A Christmas Story, a classic movie. I think everybody has to watch it every year. The track is A Chip Off the Old Block with original music by Carl Zittrer and Paul Zaza. Now, usually at the end of these shows, I will play a request of my own. But you know what? I'm not going to do that because at the end of Joe's message, he put in this last little blurb that has to do with, if you remember, that first CD player that he got for Christmas and the CD that came with it, which was John Williams's Out of This World. Well, at the end of his note, which I haven't read yet, he says this. So he goes, if for some reason that my first request was already taken, which it wasn't, might I request the theme from Battlestar Galactica from that John Williams CD I just mentioned. I know it wasn't his music, but boy, does he cover that theme as if it was his own, and it brought back all the feels. So I thought, hey, that's kind of interesting, and yeah, sure, it's not Christmas music, but you know what? Joe, I love you. Thank you very much for all of your support over the years. And I hope we get to talk again next year, do another interview and play some of your favorite tracks. But you know what? What the heck? Let's play some music from Stu Phillips's Battlestar Galactica from that CD that you got all those years ago, which John Williams conducted with the Boston Pops Orchestra called Out of This World. That's it for the show, folks. Thank you very much for listening. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Be safe. Be happy. I hope you all had a great year. I hope you have a great 2024. There are going to be more programs coming up from now until the end of the year. We have Cinematic Sound Radio's regular Christmas special, which is coming up in a few days. And I think you're going to enjoy that program. So until then, please take care wherever you are in this world, and happy listening. And now the theme from Battlestar Galactica by Stu Phillips, conducted by John Williams from the album Out of This World. Thank you for listening to the Cinematic Sound Radio Podcast. I want to thank Tim Burton for providing his voice for all the bumpers you hear throughout the program, and to David Coscina for providing Cinematic Sound Radio's theme music. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please email us at cinematicsound@yahoo.com. You can find us on social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And wherever you're listening to us today, please take a moment right now to leave us a rating and a review of the podcast. You can get a Cinematic Sound Radio t-shirt at our TeePublic store. You can join our Patreon at patreon.com/cinematicsoundradio. And don't forget to check us out on the web at cinematicsound.net.